A pleasure to meet all at last, and welcome once again to HJN Season 5. So what do we got here? Well, I could say that this is number 2798, and we have talked a bit about alligators, and as I said before, I'll spend today talking a bit more about the many other species in relation to alligators. For instance, there's the crocodile, something that's a little more well known because we don't just see them in the United States. They're in many other places throughout the world, some parts of Africa and Asia, for instance. And wouldn't you know, a few had turned up in Europe. But apart from that, with the crocodile being a little more diverse in terms of their origin and or dwellings around the world, we could say that the crocodiles are also a lot more incredible. In terms of their biting force, it's just insane. It might as well be worse than that of, let's say, having your arm being pinned down by a giant sequoia tree after it was cut down. Or possibly whenever it gets run over by a big rig. You know, a crocodile's bite force might as well be comparable to that. The kind of pressure that exudes down on your arm, crushing every bone in that exact part of your body. But we also know that the crocodile has had itself a fair share of different media appearances. Case in point, well, we could talk a bit about certain horror-related films out there, like Lake Placid, for instance, in which a large crocodile becomes a pretty bad killer in the waters, killing people, killing cows, and of course being eventually given a release. Yeah, the ending of the film was kind of more like a moral codex shown by the characters that it does not need to be destroyed because it felt endangered. Yeah, anybody remember that film? Anybody remember the kind of lesson that was ensued on there? Just because it was a giant predator doesn't automatically mean that it has to be terminated. To make the water safer or to make the land safer. But then of course, we all know that the crocodiles have a lot of their own sort of subspecies out there. I've mentioned before that there were certain other related species out there. There are the caimans, for instance, which have a bit of a different jaw structures, and there's also the Gustavs. Oh man. Their jaw structures are even more distinct in comparison. I've also mentioned that the Sucus variety of crocodiles, alligators, etc., these kind of reptiles were more ancient. And you could say that they were the ancestors of said reptiles that I've been talking about this whole time. But other than that, with all that I've mentioned in regards to crocodiles, alligators, and all that good stuff, I've said a bunch of things. I've mentioned different species, I've mentioned different locations in which they can be found, including some portions of the United States, and of course, there are a good amount of them that you can find in some zoos and certain safari trips, if you dare to trek out into the potentially dangerous and unknown that life has to offer. Nevertheless, though, I feel like I've said a good amount of stuff here already. So, I've got one more pick that I'll be doing, and I feel like that it might be the very last that I'll ever do in this particular room in the house. As we know, this is the usual location in which that I make my episodes for HJN, but since the colds are going to be setting in within the next couple of weeks, the temperatures are going to be dropping down to what I expect to be below 35 degrees, so I see no real reason as to stay around here any longer. In fact, I just might have a good spot on which that I could probably record more material for HJN, going forward at least, until the weather starts to warm back up again, which I expect to show up by at least late March, early April 2026. So, after the next episode of HJN, that's pretty much what will happen. I'll discuss about this a little further, but if you want to see more, go down to my channel, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, follow me wherever you can find me, and stay on the Hollywood side for more.